Lil Durk, the Chicago artist whose popularity has blown up over the past few years, well, he is behind bars and headed for criminal court in California. Prosecutors say he orchestrated a plot to hire hitmen and take out a rap rival. As we're tracking the progress of this case, we're also taking a closer look at how we even got here and how an apparent feud turned deadly. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, Grammy Award-winning artist and reported multimillionaire Lil Durk, whose real name is Durk Banks, is in a lot of trouble right now. The FBI says that he was part of a complicated murder-for-hire scheme that involved a shooting in the middle of the day at a Beverly Hills gas station in 2022. This actually resulted in the death of Savannah Robinson, the cousin of Georgia rapper Quando Rondo, who prosecutors say was the actual intended target of this assassination, but he wasn't harmed in the shooting. According to prosecutors, Durk helped organize and pay for his alleged co-conspirators to travel from Chicago to Los Angeles in order to kill Rondo. Durk had reportedly put out a hit on Rondo, offering money to anyone who would take him out. Now, multiple people were indicted in California court, including Durk. Now, the named defendants in the indictment are Kevon London Grant, DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, Keith Jones, David Brian Lindsay, and Asa Houston. Now, Grant was reportedly a top associate in the OTF organization. This is the Only the Family rap collective created by Durk many years ago, but authorities say this group functions more like a criminal organization, with Durk at the very top. But to get to the heart of this alleged conspiracy, we need to take a step back and we need to understand what is this apparent long-running feud between Lil Durk and Quando Rondo, right? Why would Durk want to kill him? And to help me sort all of this out, because it is a little bit of a complex timeline, I want to bring in Shawn Setaro, who is author of the book Dummy Boy, Tekashi 6ix9ine and the 9 Trey Gangsta Blood. Shawn, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Jesse, thanks for having me. And yeah, you are right. This is complicated. I don't know if we'll be able to get totally to the bottom of it, but I will do my best. You know, there are some mysteries in this story.
Yeah, and first, before we even get into that, when you saw these charges, were you surprised?
I mean, yes, in that they were very serious. Obviously, murder for hire is a very serious charge. And, you know, Durk is a big star, and he seemed to be kind of moving away from, I guess, some of the sort of more sordid aspects of his image, right? He was making the move to television, right? He was on a Power spinoff. He had, I believe, the details are vague, but he had something to do with like his criminal record being wiped. He was getting, you know, proclamations from, you know, the mayors of cities. He seems, you know, he is now very sort of community oriented and all this stuff, and seems to be moving away from, you know, being involved in beefs and all this kind of thing. So I think as contrasted to his moves in, you know, recent months, the recent year or two, yes, I would say this, you know, this caught me by surprise. But obviously this beef, as we'll talk about, has a long history.
By the way, here on Sidebar, I talk a lot about the law. This is the Law&Crime Network. I talk a lot about the law, but I also talk about legal decisions, legal rulings, and I have a landmark one for you right now that has just changed things in a very big way. Why? Because you can now legally trade on who will win the 2024 election. Yes, legally. And that's because our sponsor of Sidebar, Kalshi, went to court and won legal approval for election trading for the first time in over 100 years. So not only can you essentially bet on the 2024 presidential election winner, but with Kalshi, you can bet on who will control the House and Senate, who's going to win the swing states. You think it's pretty timely? What's happening next week? And it's not just politics, by the way. You can bet on other future events, too, like will Taylor Swift win Top Artist on Spotify this year? What's going to be the Rotten Tomatoes score for upcoming movies like Gladiator 2? I actually think it's going to do great. I think it's going to be above 85% personally, but there's so much more. You're going to be like, wow, I can trade on that? Yes, this is the only place to trade on events like this in all 50 states. And right now, you can sign up using our link kalshi.com/sidebar or scan the QR code on screen. And if you're one of the first 500 traders who deposit $100, Kalshi would give you a free $20 credit. That's kalshi.com/sidebar. And I want to give everybody a little bit of background here on the key players. So we're talking about 32-year-old Lil Durk. He was born and raised in Chicago. got his start in music on social media platforms like MySpace and YouTube. He's considered to be one of the pioneers of what's called drill. It's a subgenre of hip hop. And he formed Only the Family in 2010 with his friend King Von joining on as well. Then you have 25-year-old Quando Rondo, Georgia rapper, first uploaded his music to SoundCloud, we believe in 2017. He joined up with NBA Youngboys Collective, Never Broke Again in 2018. He's collaborated with him on multiple songs. Before we get into the actual feud between these two, I don't know if I'm doing it enough justice here, Shawn, but talk to me about the influence of both rappers in the industry. How big were both of they? How big of an influence did they both have? Talk to us about that.
I would say, Durk is a major star. Like I said, he is moving into television. He's collaborated with, the biggest names in the industry, including Drake. He I think, is in the process of making a leap from being, someone rap fans know about to someone the general public knows about. I think that's true, not necessarily of Quando Rondo, but of NBA Youngboy, also who you mentioned, who is, by miles and miles, the most popular artist on YouTube. That's where, for whatever combination of reasons, and that's a whole other topic, a large part of his fan base lives. He is giantly popular. I would say, especially among younger listeners. And at this point, it's been around long enough to kind of be pretty influential. He and Quando Rondo are very close. Quando Rondo is signed to his label. And, Youngboy plays a large part in all of this, this whole sort of back and forth that forms the background to this case.
So we have these four men, right? We have Lil Durk, we have Quando Rondo, we have King Von, we have NBA Youngboy. And all four of them had crossed paths with each other over the years in the music world. But things really started to get heated when seemingly King Von appeared to diss some of NBA Youngboy's music during an Instagram live session. And that led to a whole flurry of back and forth on social media with insults flying between the groups. In 2020, King Von said on a live stream that there really wasn't a beef between him and Youngboy. He said, they be saying that a lot. It's like we got the same issues and women, and you know how the internet will try to make it, but it ain't nothing sincere, nothing that you should worry about. Then just days later, King Von would be dead because at around 2 a.m. on November 6, 2020, apparently Lil Durk's crew got into it with Quando Rondo's crew outside of a hookah lounge in Atlanta, Georgia. There ended up being a shootout. 6 people shot, 2 died, including King Von. And despite surveillance footage allegedly showing that a man named Timothy Leaks was the one who actually shot King Von, many believe Quando Rondo was really to blame for the confrontation. By the way, Leaks' murder charge actually ended up getting dismissed. But Shawn, talk to me about the beginnings of this feud.
To a certain extent, the beginnings of this feud are sort of shrouded in mystery, right? You mentioned this Instagram live where Von is just in a car and listening to NBA Youngboy, and he, seemingly out of nowhere says, "Oh, NBA Youngboy, what's he doing? He lies in his music," right? I think says he has cap in his raps, right? Something to that effect. And that, what exactly caused that? Was that something he thought in the moment? Was it indicative of larger tensions that were bubbling behind the scenes? Honestly, I don't know. I don't think that many people outside of the real group of intimates of both sides knows. So maybe there was something before that, as far as I know, isn't public knowledge, but that was really sort of the first firing up of this back and forth that reached the public, right? And then, like you said, you had various back and forths, people, photographed with each other's girlfriends, doing songs with each other's girlfriends and baby mothers, and that ratcheted up the tension even more, and insults flying and all that kind of stuff. I'm happy to go into that in some more detail if you want, but
yeah.
To a certain extent, sorry, I was going to say, to a certain extent, like I said, the beginnings are sort of shrouded in mystery a little bit.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, look, for Rondo's part, he's always maintained that he wasn't to blame for this Atlanta shooting, that he wasn't to blame for King Von's death. And he put out a song not long afterwards, after the shooting, where he talked about how it was all self-defense. Actually, in an interview in April of 2021, Rondo claimed that he was asleep in a car when all of this happened. He also claimed he didn't even know that King Von was there and he never had beef with him. He said, I don't know where none of that came from. I never in life had words with them, ever. I did not know that was him. I swear this is all. I did not know this was him until the next day. But according to the FBI, Durk had used coded language to put out a hit on Rondo, offering money to anyone who would kill his rival. And prosecutors say that is what led to the gas station shooting in Beverly Hills. So talk to me, Shawn, about, more of this. You mentioned being with women, the songs. I think the songs back and forth, did that have anything to do with it as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't know for certain, but definitely, there was a few months before the King Von shooting, Von posts a picture holding hands with a woman who was had a child with NBA YoungBoy. And, that was sort of taken by all parties to be an insult. Then YoungBoy, in retaliation, posts a photo of himself with his own son and captions it, "I'm going to make sure my son F your daughter since you're trolling." And many people thought that was directly aimed at Von. Quando at this point sort of jumps in. He defends NBA YoungBoy. There are, to recap this whole thing and all the shots back and forth, there are 13, 15-minute videos online that you can find, right, capturing every single back and forth. But, YoungBoy, a few days before Von is killed, does a song with Asian Doll, who Von had dated on and off. And then, a few months later, you have Von saying in interviews, "This is nothing too serious." And I think, you can kind of make of that what you will. But yeah, there were plenty of song and, plenty of sort of coded disses back and forth, or lyrics that I think fans interpret as being about each other, flying back and forth during this period as well.
Was there any overt threats? Anything like that?
I mean, I think it sort of depends on how you read the language. And in all of this stuff, I think there is a certain amount of sort of coded language, plausible deniability. I think Von's sister at some point gets dragged into this, but, lyrics about your sister could, in theory, be about anyone's sister, or a sort of generic, I'll get your relative, right? I'm not saying she was threatened. I forget the exact context of the lyrics, but just for example, right? So I think, there are context clues that this is what was being talked about in these songs, certainly. But there's always that little bit of sort of plausible deniability. I think that's also true when you look at after, we'll talk about Quando's cousin being killed, but a few months after that, 5, 6 months after that, Durk is in an interview with DJ Academics, and he's sort of talking about the beef, and he says very elliptically, he's referencing the fact that people have always told him, "Oh, you have to get revenge for Von, you have to get revenge for Von." And he says very elliptically, this is a few months after Quando Rondo's cousin is murdered, he says, "I don't hear comments like that anymore, for some reason." Those are his words, "for some reason," right? So there's always this like little bit of like, if stuff buried in how people talk during this beef.
It was interesting. I was talking to Bradford Cohen, who's a high-powered attorney, represents a lot of celebrities. And we were saying how, there might be multiple ways to look at this, because there's one text message that's really, really bad that might show Lil Durk's involvement in this. And I'm going to lay out what this murder for hire plot. But the way you can look at it is either A, he was a part of it, he was funding this, he knew what was going on, or he's like, "Listen, I don't know what you guys are up to. I don't know what you guys are doing. I'm staying out of it. Don't keep my name in this. I don't want to have any part of it." So obviously there's two ways to look at it. But I do want to talk about the shooting. So this was the culmination of this alleged murder for hire plot. And prosecutors allege that Lil Durk, he learned that Rondo was going to be in Los Angeles, so he helped pay for these alleged hitmen to fly down to San Diego, then drive to LA, Kevon Grant is the one who's accused of booking the hotels, getting the cars, buying the ski masks, finding weapons, including a gun that the government says had been modified into a full-on machine gun, which itself is a federal crime. And the indictment accused the defendants of following Quando Rondo's black Escalade around Los Angeles. And traffic camera, by the way, the photos, they show a white Infiniti following the Escalade until it pulls into a gas station, and the driver of the Infiniti parks behind the gas station in an alley. In the indictment, TB, by the way, it refers to Tyquian Bowman, which is Quando Rondo's real name. SR is his cousin, who I mentioned before, Savannah Robinson. And the indictment reads, on August 19th, 2022, at the Beverly gas station, defendants Jones and Lindsay and co-conspirator 2 used the firearms procured by defendant Grant, including the fully automatic firearm, to shoot at TB's car, striking and killing SR, who was standing next to TB's car while TB was inside. The images below show defendants Jones and Lindsay and co-conspirator 2 firing their guns at TB's black Escalade. And the filing includes surveillance photos of the suspects appearing to fire guns towards the gas pumps, again, in the middle of the day. And as I mentioned, Robinson was killed. Rondo, the alleged target of this hit, as I mentioned, wasn't hurt. Shawn, that brazen attack. Talk to us about when this happened, what the reaction was.
Yeah, I mean, wow. Yeah, I would say it was definitely very shocking, right? And, unfortunately, there have been any number of shootings of entertainers, of rappers in recent years. So unfortunately, there were precedents for this, right? You can talk about Young Dolph, other things like that have happened. So it was surprising. I think it was, very sad. Certainly, did people think about, well, who has Quando Rondo been, had public disagreements with? I think certainly that entered into some people's heads. It's tough. Andre G, who writes for Rolling Stone, had a fantastic article recently where he really decried this sort of fan pressure on Durk and on his crew to retaliate for Vaughn. Like, there were fans saying stuff like,
I read that.
You've got to slide for Vaughn, right? It really is very tough when fans treat this like a game, right? Where you have to get revenge and that, because of to uphold your reputation and all this stuff. This is not to say Durk was involved in this, obviously, but just the fact that those comments even exist, I think, is indicative of, something that we really need to think about and examine.
I 100% agree with you. I read that article too. I didn't know what was going on, and to hear that, and I don't even want to say pressure, but to hear this kind of egging on and encouragement is really, really problematic, because it's not a game. And I will say, one of the other things that's problematic for Lil Durk is that on the day this indictment came down and his alleged co-conspirators were arrested, Durk, prosecutors say, was allegedly trying to flee the country, having reportedly booked multiple flights to places like the United Arab Emirates and Italy. And U.S. Marshals, they found him about an hour before he was supposed to take off. Again, I spoke with Bradford Cohen about this. A very interesting explanation for that. He said one of the things that you could see happen is sometimes people who think they're about to be indicted or about to be arrested, they will book flights to see if they get red flagged. It's a way to them, they're not actually intending to flee the country. They just want to see if they're going to get red flagged, so they know that an arrest might be incoming. Really interesting conversation about that. Now, at last check, Lil Durk was in the Broward County Jail. He's awaiting extradition to California to face these charges. So what does this mean for the apparent beef between Lil Durk and Quando Rondo? Well, Rondo actually released a new single from his album Here for a Reason just after the arrest, and the new single is called Life Goes On. And in an Instagram post, Rondo wrote, "We didn't get into this music industry to make it, just to stay caught up in this street S. We all have families and communities counting on us. It's time to leave all that behind. We've already lost so much, and it's heavy on my heart to forgive anyone I had issues with in the past. It's all love from me, praying for everyone." And while he didn't specifically mention Lil Durk, it certainly seems or could be interpreted like he's addressing their feud. Shawn, what'd you take away from that?
I was very glad to see that. I think, it makes sense, right? And I hope that that is his actual attitude and not for public consumption. I'm sure he feels all kinds of ways all of the time, but I hope that that remains his sort of public stance about all of this. I know it surprised a lot of people, his response that it wasn't antagonistic and it wasn't even, let's let this play out, justice will be done, blah, 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 like you often hear from people in comparable situations, but that it was sort of an active call for peace and forgiveness and sort of hoping for the greater good. I was very pleasantly surprised to see that statement.
Yep, I think that's a really good way to look at it. Shawn Setaro, thank you so much for coming on. Let everybody know where they can find you if they want to see more of your writings about the industry or other topics.
Sure, definitely. I have been covering the Diddy trial pretty extensively over at complex.com, writing a bunch of pieces for them. I just published one yesterday about his potential legal strategy, because there was a document kind of buried in the barrage of documents that, to me, laid out, I think, where his team is going. You can also find me on Twitter, or X, I guess now, at same old Shawn, SHAWN.
I'm not even going to ask you what you think that is, because we could probably save that for another time, but also this is how I tease, so people now have to read your article and see what you think the legal strategy is. You see how I did that? So people now have to read your article to see what you think Diddy's strategy might be moving forward into the case. Shawn Setaro, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.